A word from me, the storyteller. If you've just finished listening to the prologue and all 25 chapters, and the epilogue of the Archangel Chronicles 1, The Reluctant Prophet, I thank you, and I also congratulate you. I hope you are ready for more adventures of Adam, Abu, Sophia, Axia, and the other cast of characters, because there's a lot more coming. For those of you who are interested, I thought that I would take a few minutes to explain where the story came from before I begin publishing the next few episodes of Archangel Chronicles 2, Triumph of the Innocent. First of all, how does a good story begin? Well, not exactly at the beginning, apparently. As an example, here's the beginning of Homer's The Iliad from the Butler translation. Sing, O Muse, the anger of Achilles, son of Peleus, that brought countless ills upon the Achaeans. Many a brave soul did it send hurrying down to Hades, and many a hero did it yield to prey to dogs and vultures. For so were the counsels of Jove filled from the day on which the son of Atreus, king of men, and great Achilles first fell out with one another. Now, that is a great start. The imagination is immediately engaged. But the story starts at the middle or even close to the end of a 9-year-long siege that ended with the fall of Troy. The story of the Iliad takes place in the last year. And then there's the opening to the Odyssey. Tell me, O Muse, of the man of many devices, who wandered full many ways after he had sacked the sacred citadel of Troy. Many were the men whose cities he saw, and whose mind he learned, aye, and many the woes he suffered in his heart upon the sea, seeking to win his own life and the return of his comrades. So now that story began at the very end of the Iliad. But some great stories do begin near the beginning. For example, there's Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse, and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. And another beginning from Paradise Lost by John Milton. With loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us, and regain the blissful seat, sing, heavenly muse, that on the secret top of Oreb, or of Sinai, didst inspire that shepherd who first taught the chosen seed. In the beginning, how the heavens and earth rose out of chaos. And then this from C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Once there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. This story is about something that happened to them when they were sent away from London during the war because of the air raids. They were sent to the house of an old professor who lived in the heart of the country, 10 miles from the nearest railway station, and 2 miles from the nearest post office. He had no wife, and he lived in a very large house with a housekeeper called Mrs. Macready and 3 servants. Then there is J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, which begins like this. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 111st birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. And more recently, George R.R. Martin in A Game of Thrones. We should start back, Garrett urged as the woods began to grow dark around them. The common thread about all of these beginnings is they engage the imagination of the reader or listener, as the case may be. These are all epic stories. The first 2 by Homer were composed over 2,500 years ago. Paradise Lost was published in 1667. Moby Dick in 1851. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in 1950. The Lord of the Rings in 1954, and The Game of Thrones in 1996. Evidently, epic stories have an endless attraction for us over the ages. What is the connection with our own psyches? Why are we endlessly fascinated with such stories? As a high school student many years ago, I became fascinated with the quest plot. Christopher Booker, in The 7 Basic Plots, which is an absolutely breathtaking work, and in my opinion required reading for anyone who aspires to be a storyteller, describes the quest like this. No other type of story is more instantly recognizable to us than a quest. Far away, we learn there is some priceless goal worth any effort to achieve, a treasure, a promised land, something of infinite value. From the time the hero learns of that prize, the need to set out on the long, hazardous journey to reach it becomes the most important thing to him in the world. Whatever perils and aversions lie in wait along the way, the story is shaped by that one overriding imperative, and the story remains unresolved until the objective has been finally, triumphantly secured. Now, Booker describes the essential characteristics of the quest. He distills it down to the following salient points. The quest story begins with the call. This is the reason the hero and his companions set out on their journey in the first place. It usually begins on the note of the most urgent compulsion. The hero can no longer remain quietly at home, whatever that happens to be, as that has become impossible. Some fearful threat arises. Something is seriously and terrifyingly wrong. Amid this fear and suffering comes the call. Surrounded by menace and constriction, the hero and his friends feel under an intense compulsion to get away. They may face every kind of discouragement and opposition before they can depart. The distinctive trademark of the quest is the fact that the hero is not alone in his or her adventures. While the story may ultimately center around the single figure of the hero, we also become aware of the presence and importance of friends who accompany him. The hero's companions may be a large number of undifferentiated persons, many of whom are nameless, or there may be specific identified companions, alter egos, who have no distinguishing mark except their fidelity, such as Sam Gamgee in The Lord of the Rings. A quest usually involves a journey. The journey may be a series of alternating phases of life-threatening constriction, followed by life-giving release. The hero and his companions go through a succession of terrible nearly fatal ordeals, followed by periods of rest and respite while they recover their strength and receive help and guidance from friendly helpers to send them on their way. The physical terrain is part of the journey. The nature of the terrain across which the hero and his companions have to make the most of their journey may be wild, alien, and unfriendly. It may be a desert or wilderness, or a wild and treacherous sea. A series of obstacles are faced along the way. These obstacles stand between the hero and his goal. One of those obstacles, or more than one, may be the monster. Another type of obstacle or peril that the hero might have to face is a temptation. It may be a deceptive and treacherous one. The essence of the temptation is that it holds out the promise of some physical gratification. Often, the danger the hero runs is simply that he will be seduced and lulled into forgetting the great task he or she have undertaken, and may abandon it under some beguiling spell. If it can be mastered or overruled in some way, the tempter or temptress may completely change their nature, or rather their relationship to the hero. Far from being maligned, destructive, and a hindrance, they become the most benign of allies. Another critically important figure the hero meets on his journey is the helper. In addition to all the negative figures the hero and his companions meet on the journey, they may encounter helpers who give them positive assistance, ranging from periods of respite to crucial guidance. The helper can be the figure of a benevolent, usually wise old man, or a beautiful, young, and ageless woman. The helper may simply provide hospitality, rest, food, care, and other material assistance, or it may be something more mystical. The old man or young woman helper assume a greater significance when they come to be invested with supernatural powers. Their role is not so much to intervene in the action as to act as guides and advisors, drawing on supernatural wisdom and prescience. The hero may also encounter a deadly opposite as a type of ordeal. This may be a character or a force. The hero and his companions may have to travel an exact and perilous path between two opposing dangers. The hero may also have to undergo a visit to the underworld, inhabited by the spirits of the dead before he or she reaches their goal. The journey through the underworld is not just a harrowing ordeal. It serves a deeper purpose, enabling the hero to contemplate the fate of those who have lived before and to consult them on matters vital to his future. But the journey is only half the story. The second part, which begins when a hero is actually within sight of his or her goal, sees them having to face a final great ordeal, or series of ordeals, which may take as long to describe as everything which has gone on before it. It is this final struggle which is necessary for the hero to lay hold of the prize and to secure it. The real goal of the quest emerges as a final coming together of the hero and heroine, a man and woman, and the succession to or establishing of a kingdom. In each case, it is this which enables the quest to end on an image of completion. This conveys to us the sense that life, which is in the opening stages of the story seemed so threatened, has in some profound sense been renewed. So each quest story ends up with a great renewal of life, centered on a new secured base, guaranteed into the future, This is what the quest had been about all along. The hero and heroines show qualities which put them on the side of light. In the initial stages of the story, they may display weakness and inadequacies, but the whole underlying purpose of the story was to show that the hero or heroine matured to a state where they are finally ready for that decisive confrontation with the archetypical power of darkness, which can bring them to completion and liberation. There is another important attribute to the quest story. The best ones were meant to be read or recited out loud. For all their length and details, the ancient tales of Troy and Odysseus were recited by a bard, a poet, from memory, often accompanied by music. Can you imagine that? Committing all of that to memory, performing for hours, perhaps night after night. These tales were recited in the halls of kings and around the home fires of their subjects. And what about the audiences? Unlike us, they cultivated the capacity to listen. They also had great patience to follow the story. This is a talent that has almost been lost to us in the modern world. We are overwhelmed by 30-second sound bites and neat solutions contrived to unfold within 1-hour episodes. We have almost lost the ability to listen without distractions to these epic stories that were so important and formative to our cultures. But I think there is hope. There is a new medium where we can listen to these kinds of stories unfolding over time in our quieter moments. We can take the time to engage our minds in something meaningful. And I speak, of course, of the podcast. And so, I now come to you, my dear listener. The podcast is such an intimate medium. This story comes directly from me to you, wherever you are. No bard or storyteller of ancient times ever had one-on-one access to his or her audience at such an intimate level. You have chosen to listen to me, and I thank you. I hope that this story has meaning for you, for I am reminded of a quote from Viktor Frankl from Man's Search for Meaning. Quote, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." My wife Charlotte and I had 5 children. One of the great joys of my life was sitting with my children and reading stories to them. We experienced Frodo's quest to cast the Ring of Power into Mount Doom together. We followed the Pevensie children through the wardrobe into the winter snows of Narnia together. We sorrowed at the death of Hector at the hands of Achilles together. I've always wanted to write such a story. With the advent of COVID and being forced to spend a lot more time at home, there were no more excuses. I had to get to work. A childhood fascination with ancient Roman and Greek myths and history, Thomas Aquinas's and C.S. Lewis's description of angels, and Israel at the time of Christ drove me to ask the question, what would it be like for a very ordinary, postmodern person to be picked up from a prison of his own making and transported to the world as it was 2,000 years ago? Put those themes together and throw in some supernatural forces, and what emerged was the story of a reluctant prophet, a man with a tragic backstory, whose name literally means anyone, heeding the call to adventure. Have him conscripted by archangels on an epic quest through the fascinating ancient worlds of Rome, Egypt, Persia, India, and Central Asia, to be present at a cosmic turning point. Construct a tale of the eternal struggle between good and evil, darkness, shadows, and light. Illustrate how virtues like courage and faith will see us through the gravest difficulties. Will our protagonist agree to take on that epic quest? What companions will join him along the way? Despite the powerful forces and characters who will try to stop him, will he be able to overcome them and return to his heart's desire? Will he unwittingly change the course of history? Will he move to a higher state of consciousness? Will he transform those around him in the process? This was the first of 3 books. It ends with a mystery, and the next book, Archangel Chronicles 2, The Triumph of Innocence, will continue the quest, will begin with another mystery. This brings me to another reason for writing this story. I did it to get closer to a sacred moment. It put myself in the place and time of Jesus to see what it was like. Now, dear listener, I am going to ask you for some indulgences. I am a one-man band. It takes a lot of time to write these stories and to edit, record the narrative, add music and sound effects. Thank you for being patient as I roll these stories out over time. Stick with it. To make it viable to keep the story running, I may take on some sponsorships. You may notice some of these popping up as the story rolls out. There's also an illustrated books in the works. Watch for it. I would also like to hear from you. Let me know what you think of the story. Text me through the Archangel Chronicles at buzzsprout.com. And now, Archangel Chronicles 2, The Triumph of the Innocents.